What if your entire life depended on a tray that cost less than $1? What if every meal you received behind bars came cold, colorless, and sometimes crawling with insects? Across America's prisons and jails, food isn't just nutrition. It's punishment, profit, control, and survival. From moldy meat to meals served through steel slots, from ramen-based black markets to lawsuits exposing maggot-infested kitchens, the truth about prison food is far darker than most people imagine. And today, we're pulling back the curtain on a hidden system millions of people rely on, but almost no one ever sees. Before we begin, tap like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us uncover the darkest corners of the prison system. Now let's step inside. Prison food. Most people never think about it. But inside locked cells across the United States, every meal tells a story about money, power, and how little value is placed on the lives of the people eating it. Imagine if your daily food budget was less than $1. Imagine opening a tray to find something cold, bland, sometimes speckled with mold, insects, or ingredients you can't even recognize. For millions of incarcerated people, this isn't a nightmare or an exaggeration. It's their routine. Federal reports and research groups like the Prison Policy Initiative have shown that in many states, prisons spend less on feeding an inmate than schools spend on feeding a child. On paper, there are guidelines and standards. In reality, there are shortcuts, substitutions, and a system that treats nutrition as just another line item to cut. Investigative journalism from outlets like the Marshall Project and the New York Times has uncovered the same pattern over and over again. Food contracts designed to save money, private companies promising efficiency, and a trail of lawsuits from incarcerated people who say what they were fed made them sick. Rotten meat, expired milk, portions so small they leave people hungry even after 3 meals a day. Even at the most secure level, inside facilities like ADX Florence, food is shaped by risk and control. Meals are not about comfort or dignity. They're about moving calories in the cheapest, safest way possible, with as little human contact as the system can manage. This is the world we're stepping into, a place where a tray of food is never just a tray of food. It's a window into how punishment, profit, and policy collide behind prison walls. In 2019, the Federal Bureau of Prisons released a national 3-week rotating menu for the roughly 150,000 people in its custody. On that menu, everything looks organized and reasonable. Soy-based chili, turkey bologna sandwiches, breaded fish patties, enough calories to meet official guidelines. A mix of protein, starch, and vegetables that, at least on paper, seems acceptable. But paper and reality are not the same thing. Audits and lawsuits from around the country show how easily that neat menu breaks down. When Michigan turned its prison kitchens over to the private company Aramark, inspectors documented more than 200 incidents in just 2 years. Food shortages, rodent contamination, and unapproved substitutions meant to stretch ingredients further than they were meant to go. What should have been chicken became mysterious meat. What should have been fresh, or at least safe, sometimes arrived spoiled. In Arizona, incarcerated people filed suit over meals they described as nutritionally inadequate and unsafe. Court documents included photographs of gray-green meat and tortillas that looked old, stiff, and stale. These weren't isolated complaints. They were part of a pattern: low budgets, private contracts, and a constant pressure to do more with less. Behind every printed menu is a hidden spreadsheet: cost per inmate, cost per tray, savings per year. And when the main goal becomes cutting that cost as far as possible, the people holding the trays are the ones who pay the price. In high-security and supermax units, food takes on another layer of meaning. It's not just about cost. It's about control. In places like ADX Florence or state segregation wings, meals are carefully designed to reduce risk. Food is often pre-portioned into disposable containers. Metal trays and real utensils are rare. In some units, staff slide meals through a narrow slot in the door, so they never have to open it fully. The system prioritizes preventing assaults, limiting contact, and keeping movement inside the unit to a minimum. Official policies say these meals still have to meet calorie and nutrition standards. But former staff and inmates have described a different experience. Trays that arrive cold after being prepared far away, portions that shrink over time, substitutions that quietly replace more expensive items with cheaper, less satisfying options. Then there's the most controversial item on the menu, the disciplinary loaf, often called Nutriloaf. It's a dense brick made by blending vegetables, grains, and protein into a single baked block. Courts have said it can be legal as long as it meets basic nutritional standards. But multiple lawsuits claim the loaf has been used primarily as punishment, intentionally made unappetizing, served for days at a time, and given to people already under extreme stress and segregation. Former prisoners describe it in simple, harsh terms, like a doorstop, like wet cardboard, something you force yourself to swallow just to stay alive. In these units, food isn't just fuel. It becomes a tool of discipline, a reminder that every part of daily life, down to the last crumb, is controlled by someone else. When the official meals are small, cold, or hard to eat, people look for other options. Inside prison, that means one thing: the commissary. Instant ramen, mackerel in pouches, peanut butter, chips, snack cakes, powdered drinks. These items become more than snacks. They turn into currency. A 2015 study found that in some California prisons, ramen noodles replace cigarettes as the main unit of trade. You could pay for laundry with ramen. You could pay for a tattoo, a favor, or even protection. Formerly incarcerated people have compared ramen to gold bars. It's cheap to buy, easy to store, and always in demand. The worse the official food is, the more valuable commissary items become. This creates a second economy inside the prison, one that has nothing to do with dollars and everything to do with who has money on their books and who doesn't. At the same time, state audits show something else happening in the background. While prisons cut their food budgets and spend less per day on official meals, commissary prices often rise. That means people with outside financial support, family, friends, or savings can build a more comfortable diet. Those who are indigent or alone have no choice but to eat whatever comes on the tray, no matter how small or unappetizing it is. Food divides people into invisible classes. One group can afford extra calories, hot soups, and flavored drinks. The other group counts every bite and tries to sleep through hunger. In a system that already strips people of so much, even a pack of noodles becomes power. Cheap calories and processed snacks don't just change the social order. They change bodies. Studies in public health journals show that incarcerated people often consume diets high in salt, sugar, and saturated fat. Even when official menus meet basic calorie goals, they can still fall short on vitamins and fresh ingredients. Over years, this leads to predictable outcomes: hypertension, obesity, worsening diabetes, heart problems, and tooth decay. Medical staff in correctional systems have reported how difficult it is to provide proper diabetic or heart-healthy meals when budgets are tight and cheaper options are always on the table. High-sugar desserts stand in for fruit. Salty, processed meats stand in for lean protein. The same system that tries to save money on food ends up paying far more later in medical costs. At the center of this are private food service companies. Over the past few decades, many states handed their kitchens to corporations like Aramark and Trinity, hoping to cut costs. These companies promised efficiency and savings. What followed, in multiple states, were headline after headline about maggots in kitchens, watered-down food, calorie counts that didn't match policy, and employees caught smuggling contraband. In Michigan, the state eventually paid millions of dollars just to end a contract early. In Florida, after investigations showed underfilled trays and questionable substitutions, contracts were renegotiated, but critics say much of the underlying logic remained the same. That logic is simple: feed people as cheaply as possible. When the price per meal drops below $1, something has to give. Usually it's quality, nutrition, or both. The story of prison food didn't start with private contracts and instant ramen. In the early 1800s, institutions like Eastern State Penitentiary served simple but predictable meals: coarse bread, porridge, salted meat, and occasional vegetables. There was no variety and little comfort, but the food was prepared on site and followed a basic routine. By the mid-1900s, menus were standardized. Large industrial kitchens churned out meals for growing prison populations using powdered milk, margarine, canned goods, and bulk staples. As mass incarceration exploded in the 1970s and 80s, the number of people behind bars soared while food budgets lagged behind. That's when private companies stepped in, offering contracts that promised to feed more people for less money. Today, prison food sits at the center of a wider debate. Policy experts and medical organizations call for clear nutritional standards, independent audits, and better oversight of both public and private kitchens. They argue for banning punitive meals like disciplinary loaves and for fully honoring religious and medical diet requirements. A few states and facilities have experimented with reforms. Local sourcing programs, inmate-run gardens, scratch-cooked meals, and kitchen systems modeled more like hospitals than warehouses. Internationally, some countries offer a glimpse of what a different approach could look like. In parts of Scandinavia, incarcerated people cook in communal kitchens using fresh ingredients, under staff supervision. The goal is rehabilitation and responsibility, not just control. In the United States, those examples remain the exception, not the rule. But they prove one thing clearly. It is possible to feed people in custody in a way that is safe, healthy, and humane. For now, most trays in American prisons still reflect a harsher reality, one shaped by outdated laws, underfunded systems, and contracts that put savings ahead of nutrition. From maggot-infested kitchens to greenhouse-grown vegetables, from disciplinary loaves to ramen economies, every meal behind bars tells us something about what kind of system we've built and what kind of system we're willing to accept. If this look inside prison food opened your eyes, don't let the story end here. Subscribe for more fact-based prison and crime documentaries. Share this video with someone who cares about justice and reform, and keep asking what really happens behind the walls, starting with something as basic and as revealing as the food on a tray. If this documentary opened your eyes, don't let it stop here. Like the video, share it with someone who needs to understand this truth, and subscribe so you never miss our next investigation.